All right. So this is going to be another live recording of the Elite Development Podcast. We're going to be talking today about creating your vision. But we're going to give it a couple of minutes until we get into the show, as always. So just to let a couple of people tune in and to get us started, I just want to talk about who I like to have at these live streams, who I want to be talking to with these live streams. And I really want to be talking to athletes. I really want to be talking in these live streams to people that are involved in the athlete journey. See TJ Bell joining. TJ, thanks for showing up. What's a good win for you today? Anything that's been happening today that you're proud of, that you're happy about, that you're excited about? Let me know. Drop a comment. And so, I want to be talking to athletes. I want to be talking to people involved in that journey. I want to be talking to coaches, to parents, anyone that is part of athletes becoming better versions of themselves and building their dream careers in sport. Because if you follow this show at all, you know that's what we're all about here. And so we're going to get into the show in a minute here today. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about creating your vision. And so when I talk about creating your vision, we're going to get into a little bit about what actually goes into a vision for an athletic career. Why a lot of people are afraid to actually, first off, create a vision, and second, claim it. And then finally, we're going to leave you with a little bit of a challenge to take away into your own athletic career, apply right away, and to start working on creating that ideal vision for yourself in your athletic career. So we're going to get into it in about 10 seconds here. For anyone tuning in, drop me a comment, something you're proud of today, a big win that you had happen for you today or sometime this week. And we're going to get into the show here in 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the show designed to help athletes gain an edge on their opponent and build their dream careers in sport. And today we are going to be talking about creating your vision. So the reason I thought this was an important topic, and the reason I wanted to get into this today, is because more and more and more as time goes on, I realize we live in a world full of doubt. We live in a world full of hate. Clear evidence, you go to any YouTube video and check out the comment section, there's almost inevitably people threatening to kill each other over nothing. And just, we live in a very, very strange time. And it's easy to get swept up in that. It's easy to get swept up in that culture of hate, that culture of doubt, and that culture of basically just tearing other people down because it's easier than trying to make yourself rise up. And the way this ties into creating a vision for an athletic career is that a lot of the time you're going to experience that hate and that doubt when you start to succeed, but also when you start to actually claim the success that you're after. And a lot of the time that doubt can come from people that are close to you. This can be parents, this can be siblings, friends. And a lot of the time that comes from a good place. It comes from a place of not wanting to see you get hurt. It comes from a place of compassion, but it can have very negative effects. You know, what I mean when I say that is a lot of the time parents and friends won't just straight up tell you not to push for something, but a lot of the time you'll see something like, them telling you not to get your hopes up when you talk about those dreams and those goals that you have for your sport. They'll tell you, oh, it's great to dream, but maybe you should have your plan B. Maybe you should be a little more realistic, and just have all kinds of these phrases that are kind-hearted, but can really set that self-limiting belief into your mind that these goals that you've set for yourself aren't possible. And so when you're creating your vision for your athletic career, it's important to remember that. And it's important to understand that even if we live in a culture where you're going to experience a lot of doubt, and you're going to experience a lot of people telling you that a career as a professional athlete is impossible, or to, make an Olympic team is impossible, or that any of these goals you have are impossible, or, you're going to run into people making fun of you thinking that doing something like this is going to be possible. It's important to understand, and it's important to truly believe that these opinions are nothing more than just that, opinions. But if you're going to rise above those opinions and you're going to actually be one of those athletes that builds their dream career in sport and doesn't fall off and doesn't look back at 40, 50, 60 years old with regret, it's time to start being intentional. And it's time to start being intentional right away. Now, what do I mean when I talk about being more intentional? And that's really what we're going to dig into today, is creating that vision. And so when you're running into these people that are hating on the dreams that you've got for yourself, that you've got for your career, or running into these people that are making fun of you because, you're somebody who's actually striving for something, instead of letting that get to you and letting that be the reason that you quit, and that be the reason that you decide not to bet on yourself, because if these people think it's not possible, then it's probably not possible. Let that be the reason that you double down. Let that be the reason that you decide to go all in. Let that be the reason that you succeed. So the way we can start on that path to success is creating the vision. You say you want to be successful in your sport. You say you want to take it all the way. You say you want to, take it further than anybody. But what does that actually mean? So if you're an athlete listening to this right now, and when somebody asks you what your goals are for your sport, you say, I want to take it all the way, or you say, I want to go as far as I can, or you say, I want to be a pro. What does that actually mean? What does that career look like for you if it plays out perfectly? And when you ask yourself that question, don't ask yourself, what do I think I can achieve in my career? Ask yourself, what do I actually want to achieve? If everything goes exactly to plan, what does my career in sport look like? And so take a minute, pause this episode right now as you're listening to this, and write that down. Start brainstorming, start writing down exactly where you want to compete, exactly how much money you want to make as a professional, exactly what level you want to get to in your sport. Do you want to represent your country? What medals are you going to win? Where are you going to compete? How much money are you going to make? Every last little piece of what that vision is for you, if it plays out perfectly. And the reason that's so important, the reason I want you to be as detailed as possible when you're writing out this vision, is that the more detail you have when you've written this out, the clearer it is. And the clearer it is, the better position you're putting yourself in to be able to work towards it. Going as far as I can is very broad, and it's easy to fall off of that path. I want to fight in the UFC and win a world championship is very specific, and now you have examples to follow. You can look at every current UFC champion and start learning from what they've all done. You can look at where they were at when they were your age and look at what your next steps need to be. And then that is the next step of that vision. Once you have all of those accomplishments written out, once you have your ideal career written out on paper, now take a step back and look at where you're at and where your ideal vision is going to lead you. From where you're at right now, what is your next step? So coming back to the MMA example, if you have a dream of being a UFC champion and you've had 2 amateur fights, and in those 2 amateur fights you lost and you got controlled on the ground for the entire duration of the fight, well, the next step in your career is probably doing something about your lack of wrestling ability. Because if you're going to win a UFC championship, you probably need to be a pretty good wrestler. And being able to break it down into little pieces like that allow you to understand where you're at and what you actually need to improve to get where you want to go. Does that all make sense? As you're listening to this, I hope that does make sense. If it doesn't, make sure you're sending me a message, you're dropping me a comment, you're asking questions about these things as we go. The goal of this show is to help athletes develop into the best version of themselves and build the dream careers that they want in sport. And the absolute best way for you as an athlete to achieve everything you want in sport is, as I mentioned, to be intentional, but on top of that, to ask questions. Don't try to figure everything out yourself. Don't try to take in information and just decide what to do. There are people around you for a reason. The internet exists for a reason. Start asking people questions, start sending messages. People like myself, other coaches that are in my position, I know so many are happy to hop on calls, are happy to answer DMs to help athletes out and help set them on that right path. So, as you're writing out that vision, as you're writing out every single thing you want to accomplish in your sport, and then now you've brought it back to where you're at today and where you need to go to accomplish all of these goals. Now is where we can break it down into goal setting. If you have your vision and you have that dialed in, you know exactly who you're going to be as an athlete. Now we dial it into goal setting. What is the number one most important thing that you need to improve on in order to set yourself on the right path? Because again, going back to that example I've used, if you're an amateur fighter and your goal is to be a UFC champion, trying to look at everything you need to do from where you're at now to where you want to end up is a crazy, crazy, crazy amount of work. But now, if you can take that today and you can look at one thing and you write down that one thing, and the example I used before, it was improving the wrestling. Now you can look at that and you could say, okay, what can I do this week? This week, I can go to an extra wrestling practice. And as simple as that sounds, you're adding one practice to put yourself on the path to becoming a UFC champion. This is the idea of training more intentionally. This is the idea of truly building a foundation for your future in sport. If you're an amateur fighter right now and you're trying to be a UFC champion, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to pick a UFC champion and do everything that they do, you're going to burn out and you're never going to make it anywhere. But if you're able to look at the gap you have from where you're at now to where you want to end up, now you can build on that. You can start small. You can add one thing. And then once you have that one thing in your schedule, add another, and then another, and then another. And then you can build an intentional plan and you can actually start seeing that progress happen over time. Now, on the note of seeing the progress over time and the note of building that intentional plan, one of the most important things I want to touch on when you're creating your vision for your athletic career is understanding that the process is everything. Yes, it's great to have that outcome. Yes, it's great to have that goal of being a world champion at something. But if the only thing you're focused on is becoming a world champion, it's going to get very, very, very frustrating when you're not there quickly. And I hate to break it to you, but being the best in the world at something is not going to happen overnight. So if you're going to actually make these goals happen, if you're going to actually achieve everything you want to achieve in your sport, you can't only be focused on the end goal. So as you're building that vision and as you're understanding where your gaps are right now and what you need to improve on to actually be able to achieve those goals and actually be able to build that career that you want, what I really need you to understand is that it's all about the process. If you can learn to fall in love with those small little improvements that you're seeing, that one rep that you couldn't do last week that you can do this week, every one of those improvements, every one of those little points of progress are a step in the right direction. Every one of those little points of progress are a step towards achieving that goal of becoming a world champion. So to wrap this up, I want to recap a little bit of what we talked about. So we're talking about creating your vision for your athletic career. And in order to create that vision, we're talking about all the steps you need to take right now. So number one, I want you all to do this as well. The point of this show is to help you build your career in sport, to help you actually end up achieving what you want to achieve in the world of high performance sport. So number one, write out every detail of that vision. Where are you going to compete in your athletic career? What teams are you going to be playing for? What organizations are you going to be fighting for? Are you going to be representing your country? How much money are you hoping to make from your sport? Is it enough for you to just be a professional, or do you want to be the best in the world at it? What do you want to be known for within your career? Every little detail that you can put down is going to help build clarity. Number two, You've got to take a look at where you are right now and understand the gaps between where you are now and where you're trying to be. Now, yes, if you're young in your career, there are going to be some very, very big gaps, and that's not anything to be worried about. That's not anything to be upset about. That's normal. But if you can be intentional now and you can start actually building and actually developing now into the athlete you need to be to achieve those world level goals that you have, you're going to make more progress than all the rest of those kids that are in your position. So don't be upset if the gaps are quite large. Don't be upset if you're not close to achieving that goal yet. Just write down where the gaps are, understand to the best of your abilities where your gaps are in your sport from where you are right now to where you want to end up in your career. And then that is where you can start building your plan. So we're going back to that UFC example. If you're an amateur fighter right now and you want to be a UFC world champion and you've had 2 amateur fights and you got controlled on the ground for both of those fights and lost them both by decision, now you should hopefully understand that your gap is in the wrestling, first and foremost. So when you're sitting down on the weekends to plan out your week and plan out how you're going to take a step forward this week to becoming a UFC world champion, the chances are part of that plan is going to be around improving your wrestling. And the more intentional you can be, the better you can plan that out, the more progress you're making day in and day out towards achieving those goals. So the challenge I want to leave you guys with is write out that clear vision, write out as much detail as you can. And if you're not really sure where to start, send it to me. If you're open to it, send it, share it, talk to people about it. And the more you can kind of put it out there, the more you can gain clarity on what it is as well. You might just not have the right wording right now, but if you start talking about it and you start putting it out into the world, now that energy's out there and people are going to start seeing you a little differently. And when people see you a little differently, you're going to start seeing yourself a little differently. And then that vision takes shape over time, but you understand right away that you're here to achieve something. You're not here to be like everybody else. So the challenge I want to leave you with is write out that vision in as much detail as possible and share it with somebody. It can be somebody close, like a family member. It can be teammates or people that you train with. It can be coaches, anybody that you want. Share it with somebody and put that energy out into the world. It's amazing what that feels like. And it's amazing once you can understand that if somebody doesn't vibe with that energy, if somebody sees that and doesn't support it, that is okay. And that is not going to slow you down. So that's it for me. I hope you guys take to this challenge. I hope you guys write out that vision. I'd love to see some of them if you're open to sharing them. I always love seeing the feedback that I get from these episodes. I appreciate everyone who took the time to tune in live. And if you're watching this on the replay or if you're listening to this on the podcast, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen. And this is the thing I love to do the most. I love to help athletes. I love to help the athletes develop in their careers. And you taking the time to listen helps a lot. And if you would, I'd love it if you'd share this with a friend, a teammate, a coach, somebody in your life, somebody in your network that can help athletes along that long, difficult journey that they're all part of. So thank you all again for tuning in. This has been another episode of the Elite Development Podcast. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys again next time.